Hello everyone, this is Bhavik Choksi over here. Hope you guys are doing well and your studies are going in full swing. So today's video is on a specific question, that is question number 11, that had come in the CF Final Financial Reporting New Syllabus RTP of November 2020. This is a question involving Ind AS 109, that is financial instruments, and Ind AS 21, this is foreign exchange. A lot of students have given doubts on this particular question, and a lot of you are also mentioning that the solution appears to be incorrect by the ICI. In my humble opinion, the solution appears to be correct. So what we'll do is we'll quickly run through the legal provisions and also the solution in a slightly different presentation format, which is easier to understand. Okay, so let's get started. So before we jump into the question, this question has two specific concepts which has kind of created some confusion in the minds of students, which are not as well dealt in the study material. They're there as a part of the main standards, the bare standards which are issued by the institute, but they're not as well dealt in the study material. Concept number one, what if there is an investment in a bond and this bond is measured at fair value through other comprehensive income, that is FVTOCI, and this bond is in foreign currency. Acha, in such a case, generally, if you would be aware, if there is an investment in bond and this investment in bond, this is general provision, there is no confusion over here. If there is an investment in bond, this bond can either be measured at amortized cost or it can be measured at fair value through other comprehensive income. Generally, if it is held in the business model of collecting cash flows only, so there's no intention of selling, then it is amortized cost. If it is collecting and selling both, then it is fair value through other comprehensive income. So let us assume this is a bond which is measured using fair value through other comprehensive income principles, that is FVTOCI. Now, if there's a change in the fair value of the bond, where should that change go? Basic provisions, there's no ambiguity in this point. Where will the fair value gain go? Well, let us assume the bond was made through an investment in rupees. This was 1000 rupees. By the end of the year, this is becoming 1100 rupees. There's a fair value gain of 100 rupees. Where will this go? Well, this has to go to fair value reserve. In other comprehensive income, as the name goes, it is fair value through other comprehensive income. Now, the challenge will arise if this bond is in foreign currency. If this bond is in foreign currency, there will be a fair value gain, but along with the fair value gain, there will also be a foreign exchange gain or loss. Yes, the bond's foreign currency, this bond will be probably quoted on the US stock exchange, and hence the dollar fair value will change. And if the dollar fair value changes, there is a fair value gain or a fair value loss. Where will that go? Well, that has to go to other comprehensive income, that is OCI. There is no ambiguity in this. Then where is the ambiguity, sir? Well, what if there is a foreign exchange gain or loss? Where should the foreign exchange gain or loss go? Well, we will say foreign exchange is actually covered under Ind AS 21. Ind AS 21 is a standard on foreign exchange. I hope you are aware about the number at this stage. Ind AS 21 is a standard on foreign exchange, and that governs the principles for recording foreign currency gains and losses. The general principles under Ind AS 21 are, and I'm just doing it in rough so that we don't invest a lot of time over here. At this point, your time is of essence. So at Ind AS 21, if it is monetary items, roughly speaking, if there's monetary items, any gains or losses that arise out of monetary items are to be restated at closing rate, and any gains or loss that arise will go in the profit and loss account. Very clear over here. It will go to the profit and loss, no ambiguity over here. Monetary items will be at the closing rate and the gain or loss will be in the profit and loss account. Please pardon me, I'm doing it in rough so that we kind of wrap this up slightly faster. Then you have non-monetary items. Well, at what rate should the non-monetary items be recorded? Well, Ind AS 21 says, this is what Ind AS 21 says. Ind AS 21 says that the non-monetary items depend on whether these non-monetary items were measured at historic cost or whether they are measured at fair value. So if they are measured at historic cost only, then they will be at the spot rate as on the date of transaction, which is also called as a historic rate. And if this is measured at fair value, then they will be at the rate when fair value is determined. Are we clear with this? Yes, okay. This is at the rate when the fair value is determined. This is general principle of Ind AS 21. Now, in case of a non-monetary item, if there is any gain or loss, where should that go? Well, typically, unless otherwise given, it goes to the profit and loss account. However, there is para 30 of Ind AS 21 which tells you that if there is a non-monetary item and that non-monetary item, in that non-monetary item there is a foreign exchange gain or loss, then that foreign exchange gain or loss will go exactly where the underlying gain or loss is going. So if there is a bond which is, let us assume for the time being, a non-monetary item, and if there is a gain or loss on that bond, that gain or loss goes to other comprehensive income, that is OCI, and as a result, the foreign exchange gain on that should also go to the other comprehensive income, that is OCI. This should be the ideal treatment. And a lot of students have written to me saying that, sir, this is, institute has taken it into the profit and loss account, exchange rate gain or loss. Well, that is because Ind AS 109, that is on financial instruments, has a specific exclusion for this point, and I've given you relevant paras as well. We'll discuss that. In law, if you are aware, in your inter-C also you would have studied that there is a principle. There is general law and then there is specific law. If there's a specific clause, specific always overrides general. So let us try to see where the conflict arises. The question over here, what we are trying to address, is where should, first issue, where should, and to be honest, not much clarity is given in the institute study material on this point. It's just there in the RTP, and hence there is some level of confusion among students. Where should forex gain / loss on bonds measured at fair value through other comprehensive income be recorded? Where should the foreign exchange gain or loss on bonds measured at FVTOCI be recorded? Well, there are two options. It should be either in the profit and loss account or in the other comprehensive income. If you look at the plain language of Ind AS 21, para 30, it will go in other comprehensive income. Are we getting this? Now, let us look at what Ind AS 109 has to specify. What I have given over here is, this is the part for Ind AS 21, the two relevant paras. This is para 28, this pertains to foreign exchange gain or loss on monetary items. This is para 30, which is the relevant part for foreign exchange gain or loss on non-monetary items. As we had mentioned, I'll just read this. When a gain or loss on a non-monetary item is recorded in other comprehensive income, any exchange component of that gain or loss should also be recognized in other comprehensive income. Bang on. Conversely, if the gain or loss on item is recorded in P&L, exchange gain or loss will also be in P&L. Okay. And if there is monetary item, exchange differences arising on settlement of monetary items or translating of monetary items at the rates different from those that are translated or initial recognition or in the previous financial statement shall be recognized in P&L. So in monetary, you don't have such bifurcations. By monetary, you look at where the underlying is going. Is the underlying going in P&L? Is the underlying going in OCI? No, that is only there in non-monetary. Ye aapka Ind AS 21 ho gaya. This is Ind AS 21 done. So ideally, if I just look at this, it appears that this should go in other comprehensive income, because this is investment in bonds, usually, which is a non-monetary item, and if the bond is measured at FVTOCI, the gain or loss goes in OCI, then the foreign exchange gain or loss should also be taken in OCI. Okay, let us see what Ind AS 109 has to offer. This is the bare section. This is not my language. This is Ind AS 109 language. Assets measured at fair value through other comprehensive income. There are two paras. One is para 5.7.10 and then is para 5.7.11. They give a reference to a third para, and hence we are mentioning that. Please have some patience. It is an important concept. Invest 5 to 10 minutes of your time and get through with this. What does para 5.7.10 say? A gain or loss on a financial asset measured at fair value through other comprehensive income. Apna hi case, FVTOCI, in accordance with para blah blah blah, 4.1.2. This is pertaining to the contractual cash flows test and business model test. Shall be recognized in other comprehensive income. Sir, isme kuch naya baat nahi hai. There is nothing new over here. Next, what I have underlined is the important part. Except for impairment gains or losses and foreign exchange gains or losses, for which the institute gives a reference to para B.5.7.2 and 7.2a. I'll again read the part which is in blue. So the general principle is if there's any gain or loss on the bond, the gain or loss on the bond should go to OCI. No ambiguity in that. However, if that gain or loss pertains to an impairment gain or loss, or if that pertains to a foreign currency gain or loss, there are separate clauses given for that. Impairment, there is a past RTP question where you would have seen impairment gain or loss goes to profit and loss account. Even if the bond is measured at FVTOCI, impairment gains or loss goes to profit and loss account. It's a past RTP question, I think November 19 or May 20. And foreign exchange gains or losses. Achha, so this is except. So they are saying ideally all gains or losses should go to other comprehensive income except foreign exchange gains, for which you need to see para 5.7.2 and para 5.7.2a. So that I have mentioned below. So there is para 5.7.2a, which is a relevant para, which mentions, please pay attention, and this is where the specific law pertaining to this specific item will override the general law given in Ind AS 21. For the purpose of recognizing foreign exchange gains and losses under Ind AS 21, very categorically mentioned, a financial asset measured at fair value through other comprehensive income in accordance with para 4.21a, I've underlined, is treated as a monetary item. Sir, वो non-monetary है. हाँ, non-monetary होना चाहिए. If this para was not there, it should have been non-monetary. Perfect. However, the law specifically requires you to treat this as a monetary item. And if you are treating this as a monetary item, the gains or losses, the foreign exchange gains or losses which arise on account of a monetary item have to necessarily go to the profit and loss account only. There's no question of taking them to other comprehensive income, even under Ind AS 21. Ind AS 21 para 28 tells you monetary items, if there's a difference on account of translation, it has to go to the profit and loss account. Non-monetary, it has conditional clauses. Monetary, no condition, it has to go to the profit and loss account. And this para clearly mentions that for fair value gains or losses for bonds under FVTOCI, it has to go in other comprehensive income, except for impairment losses, which will go to P&L. It's not a part of this problem, it's a part of an older problem, and foreign exchange gain or losses. So we have taken the relevant paragraph for foreign exchange gains or losses where they mention that this investment is to be treated as a monetary asset. Okay. And आगे देखते क्या लिखा हुआ है, and accordingly they have clarified, and this is not my interpretation of the standard, this is written in the standard. You can open the relevant para, control F करके आप सीधा ये para जा सकते हो in the MCS bare standard. Accordingly, such financial asset is treated as an asset measured at amortized cost in foreign currency, and exchange differences on the amortized cost are recorded black and white in the profit and loss account. Exchange differences in the profit and loss account, and other changes in the carrying amount. Other changes, exchange के अलावा जो भी changes रहेंगे, other than exchange, whatever are changes, which can be due to fair value differences, other changes are recognized in accordance with para 5.7.1. Para 5.7.10 अपन ऊपर देखा, which has mentioned that generally the changes have to be measured in OCI except for impairment and except for foreign exchange. Impairment goes to P&L, foreign exchange as per the paragraph that I've inserted below, which is a direct extract from Ind AS 109, should also go to the profit and loss. And hence, as per my understanding, and I stand open to be corrected over here, but as per my understanding, this goes to the profit and loss account, and I will stick to the institute solution. I don't think that it is wrong. I'll stick to the institute solution because they have taken this in the profit and loss account, and we'll see that in some time. So the first problem, where should the foreign exchange gains or loss on items measured at FVTOCI be recorded? We will say in the profit and loss account. Sir, but non-monetary items, well, this is not treated as a non-monetary item. This is treated as a monetary item, and it has specifically been told under Ind AS 109 that the exchange differences on this bond have to be taken to the profit and loss, and anything beyond that has to be taken to the other comprehensive income. So the exchange differences, if they arise on this bond, will be taken in the profit and loss account. Question number 1, not really as well addressed in your study material. There's no problem. There's no even theory. To the extent that I have read the study material, I could not even find relevant theory for that. It's there in the bare standard. So, second point is, in case of a bond which is measured at fair value through other comprehensive income, Sir, in all the questions in the study material, we have not seen effective interest rate. We have seen effective interest rate in case of amortized cost. We have not seen effective interest rate in case of fair value through other comprehensive income. It is not mentioned in the study material, and hence in general, whenever there is fair value through other comprehensive income, what the institute has done is it has taken the coupon rate only, and there were fair value differences. No separate effective rates were given, and hence we have not taken any separate workings. However, again, if you read through the bare paragraph, so the question over here is, bonds measured at fair value through other comprehensive income, should interest income be measured as per coupon rate, or should it be measured using effective interest rate? So in general, if you look at your study material questions, almost all study material questions, if you go to see in questions involving bonds where investments are at fair value through other comprehensive income, there is no separate effective rate given. And hence we have not really bothered to do any other working, and hence we say in general we always have the coupon rate only. So the general conclusion is that this should ideally be at coupon rate. However, sir, what if a problem comes where effective interest rate is given? Acha, merely because it is given, should you take it? No, not necessarily. It has to be mentioned in the law. Otherwise, if it is not told, like amortized cost, interest is always recognized using effective interest rate principles. However, if it is FVTPL, you generally take coupon rate. If it is FVTOCI, at least the problems that we have practiced, the problems which are there in the study material, does not involve any problem where, as long as I'm aware, there might be a problem that if I've missed, I'm not sure, but there is not enough problems where FVTOCI bonds are there and effective interest rate is also there. But this RTP question involves that. So should we take the coupon rate or should we take the effective rate? Let us try to come to that as well. Let us look at the bare provision once, the same relevant paras. Then a lot of Gyan is given to you, a lot of knowledge is given, but at the end, if you go to see what I've highlighted at the end of para 5.7.10, interest is calculated using the effective interest method is recognized in the profit and loss. Interest is using effective interest rate. Achha, if an effective interest rate is not separately given in the question, you don't sit and calculate it. You will take the coupon rate. But if an effective interest rate is given, you have to take that. Going further to 5.7.11, as described in 5.7.10, it's an extension. If a financial asset is measured at fair value through other comprehensive income in accordance with the particular para, then the important section, I'll highlight this in blue. The amounts that are recognized in profit and loss are same as the amounts that would have been recognized in profit or loss if financial asset has been measured at amortized cost. And if it is measured at amortized cost, it is effective interest method. So if you look at both of these, they clearly point out to the fact that if an effective interest rate, from a student perspective, if an effective interest rate is given in the question for bonds which are measured at FVTOCI, even that has to be measured using EIR only. In the study material, you don't have enough problems of FVTOCI where there is effective interest rate and coupon rate, and almost all problems have only coupon rate. So we assume that the coupon is kind of same as effective. But if there is a separate effective rate, I've given you the bare standard, so there is no ambiguity over here. Interest is calculated using the effective interest method as per the profit and loss, and this is pertaining to assets measured at FVTOCI only. Para 5.7.11 further elaborates and clarifies that, and it tells you that no, you have to account for the interest that goes in the P&L using effective interest method only, like you do for amortized cost. And this, I hope, even if I now don't go ahead and solve the sum, I think you would have done the problem. At least the November 20 students would have. May 21 may not have done by now. But you should be in a better position to handle these two tricky areas. Moral of the story. Last how much? 20 minutes. We have spent, अगर आपको नहीं कुछ समझ में आ रहा है, you are unable to grasp it. Moral of the story, two things. First, if there's a bond measured at FVTOCI, exchange difference, where should it go? Goes in the P&L, not in OCI. This is only for bonds measured at FVTOCI, not for other items like PP, etc. That is because of a specific provision. Second, if there is a bond measured at FVTOCI and there's an effective interest rate also given, then you measure it at the effect using the effective interest method. I hope that's clear. Now, taking these two concepts in our mind, we will solve it. What I've done is I've given the exact institute question, exact institute solution, and then I've done it in my way, slightly simplified manner, in a tabular manner. So you can solve it in any manner as long as you get the answers correct and give the effect correctly. According to my humble opinion, the institute's solution is kind of correct, but I stand open to be corrected if I have missed out something over here. But if I had to solve, I would solve taking the institute solution as base. Okay, so let us try to go through the question quickly. So we'll start with the question now. An Indian entity whose functional currency is the rupees purchased USD denominated bonds at its fair value of $1,000. Okay, so this is purchased. A rupee company is purchasing bonds at 1,000. Ind AS 21 tells you record it at the exchange rate prevailing as on the date of transaction. The bond carries stated interest rate of 4.7% on its face value. Acha, if nothing was given, then $1,000 you would have assumed is the face value. Read further. The said interest is received at the year end. So that is at the end of the year. The bond has a maturity period of 5 years and is redeemable at its face value of USD 1250. So face value is clearly USD 1250 and your coupon rate is 4.7%. Coupon rate is on face value, remember. The fair value of the bond at the end of year 1 is USD 1060. When you invested, it was 1,000. Now, if you see, this is going to 1060. The exchange rate as on the date of transaction and at the end of year 1 are 40. This is on the date of transaction. So 1,000 will get converted at 40. So let me just put similar colors. So let's have 1,000 and 1060. 1,000 will be converted at the rate of 40 because that is the rate prevailing as on the date of transaction, and USD 1 at 45 respectively. So 1060 should ideally be converted at 45. The weighted average exchange rate for the year is 42. Now interest, remember, accrues throughout the year and hence interest will be recorded at 42. This is a rate which is relevant for recording interest. It accrues throughout the year. Coupon, remember, is received as on a specific date and hence coupon has to be recorded as on the rate when the coupon is received, that is the year end. The entity has determined that it is holding the bond as a part of investment portfolio's objective is met both by holding the asset to collect the contractual cash flows and selling the asset. So it is a business model of collecting and selling both. So the appropriate classification ideally for this bond should be FVTOCI, even if it was not given to you in the question. But if we read the next line, that is given. The purchased USD bond is to be classified under the FVTOCI category. The bond results in an effective interest at the rate of 10% per annum. Sir, is this given to us? Yes. So will we have to calculate the interest income using effective interest method? Yes, considering the amortized cost as the base. Considering the amortized cost workings as a base, you will have to calculate the effective interest. Calculate the gain or loss to be recognized in the profit and loss account. Profit and loss में क्या जाएगा? Well, interest income will go in the profit and loss account and exchange gain will go in the profit and loss account, and other comprehensive income, fair value gain, will go in the other comprehensive income. For the year 1, also pass the journal entry to recognize the gain or loss, round off the figures to the nearest rupees. So this is, you can just pause the video and absorb the question once. Once you are done with that, okay, the solution given on the first slide, page number 3, is exactly as per the institute solution. What I will do is I will do it in a slightly different way. We'll get the same answers, same working. So remember, you are going to get credit as long as your workings are correctly done, irrespective of which format you follow. This is not schedule 3. So we'll do it in a slightly different way. What are we going to do? We will try to find the closing balance in dollars using the amortized cost principles. Then we will also try to find the closing balance in rupees using the amortized cost principles and Ind AS 21 principles. and using that we can try to find the foreign exchange gain or the foreign exchange loss. Let us get started. First of all, so this is alternative presentation format that we have prepared. Investment in bonds is in dollars. So we will say that let us assume dollar was our functional currency. Dollar was our functional currency, then the initial investment would have been in dollars, that is $1,000. Let the face value be 1250. Have you invested 1250? No, you have invested $1,000 and hence your initial value should be at $1,000. Answer wo to barabar hai. So your opening will be $1,000. Interest is to be recognized based on what? Based on coupon rate or effective rate? Well, interest income based on effective rate, but the actual cash flow based on coupon rate. So your opening balance is 1,000. Why should this 1,000 increase? Well, because during the year you expect to earn interest. On this 1,000 at the rate of 10%, which is the rate given to you in the question, interest is $100. $100. Okay. However, have you received 100? Well, you have received 4.7%, but 4.7% on what? On the face value, and hence you have taken 1250. Please be careful over here, into 4.7%, and here effective interest rate is calculated based on $1,000. Effective interest always on the investment. So this will give you 59, and as a result your closing balance, if we were following amortized cost principles, I will again repeat, if we were following amortized cost principles, will be 1041, that is $1,000 plus 100. So ideally you should have received 1100, that is the receivable, out of which 59 is received, and hence the remaining 1041 is the balance. However, because we are following FVTOCI, because we are following the FVTOCI, we have to remeasure the bond at fair value, even if dollar was your functional currency, not rupees, forget rupees. Even if dollar was your functional currency, you had to remeasure the bond. And this bond, which in your ledger is at 1041, will now be remeasured at 1060. And hence, so this is given. And hence the difference, you can always find this as a balancing figure as well. We'll say in our ledger we had 1041. However, the closing balance should be 1060, and hence the difference, 19, is the fair value gain. And where will this fair value gain go? Yes, it will go in OCI. This is not the exchange gain. This is the gain on account of the inherent increase in the value of the bond. This will go in the other comprehensive income. Perfect. Now, unfortunately, is your functional currency dollars? No. So is your functional currency rupees? Well, yes. And as a result, you have to, along with Ind AS 10N, also apply Ind AS 21. What does Ind AS 21 say? Well, whenever the transaction happens, initial recognition should be based on the exchange rate prevailing as on the date of transaction. So when the bond was actually purchased, the exchange rate prevailing was, I think, 40 rupees per dollar. And hence in your tally or in your SAP or in your accounting softwares, when you are passing journal entries, your entry will be investment in bond account debit. Not at $1,000, but in rupees. But for converting into rupees, you will have to find the exchange rate as on the date of the transaction, which is, by the way, 40 rupees. And hence your opening balance will be 40,000. What I have done is I have passed individual journal entries. Institute has passed one combined entry, you can do that, but I have passed, for the easy understanding, separate journal entries. So in your tally, in your accounting softwares at year 0, you will pass the investment in bonds account debit to bank. This is rupees 40,000, mind you, in your functional currency in rupees, and hence the transactions will be recorded in rupees. 40,000. So this is done in your ledger. Dollars don't come in your ledger, rupees go in your ledger. Will you still have to recognize the effective interest? Well, yes. But interest accrues over the year, and we have been given that the average rate is 42. And hence $100 will be converted at 42. So your translated balance is 4,200. So ideally you should have received 40,000 plus 4,200, that is 44,200. However, during the year, not during the year, at the year end, if you see the question, at the year end, you have received, the bond carries interest at 4.7%, when face value, the said interest is receivable at year end. At the year end, you have received $59. At the year end, you have received $59, and this $59 is not received at the average rate. They are not received in each month. It is not monthly interest. It is paid at the end. And when that hits your rupee bank account, the rate prevailing is 45. And hence 59 into 45. Exchange rate prevailing as on the date of the transaction. 59 into 45 should come to 2655. So this is received. And hence you will deduct. So if you take your calculators, 40,000 plus 4,200 less 2655. So ideally, your closing balance should have been, if I were to invest this in a rupee bond, the closing balance would have been 41,545. How did we get this? Well, 40,000 plus 4,200 minus 2655, and you would have received 41,545. However, as per Ind AS 21, monetary items, and we now call this as a monetary item, by the way, should be measured at the closing rate. Even if it was non-monetary, it is measured at fair value, and hence it has to be at the exchange rate prevailing at the end of the year when the fair value was determined. So let us say your closing amortized cost is actually $1041, and this has to be converted at the closing rate. So ideally, if everything was at the same rate only, please pay attention to this. If everything was at the same rate, for example, let's say the exchange rate throughout was 40 only. If all throughout the exchange rate was 40 only, you will find that the numbers will tally. If the exchange rate all throughout was 40, then there will be no difference. However, during the year, you have recorded investment at 40, effective interest at 42, coupon at 45, and the closing balance will be entirely converted at 45. Out of that 45, 1041, yes, coupon has been converted at 45 only, but other than that, the opening balance that was 1000 and the interest that was 100 are converted at some different rates, and hence there is a balance. Remember, if the currency, the exchange rates were same, we have not even looked at 1060, mind you, till now. We have not even looked at 1060. Had the exchange rates remained the same, 40 all throughout, then there would be no balancing figure. $1,000 will also be converted at 40, $100 also at 40, 59 rupees also, $59 also at 40, and hence whatever is the closing balance of 1041 will also be at 40, and there will be no difference. However, what is happening now is 1041 is converted at 45. $59 converted at 45, but $1,000 converted at 40, $100 converted at 42. Array, if you keep on applying different exchange rates, is it going to tally? No, it is not. Then the reason why it is not tallying is because you have used different exchange rates for converting different items. We have not even touched the fair value of 1060 or the fair value gain of 19 till this stage. We have only looked at the exchange rates and the closing balances and opening balances along with the interest. So if I were to take the difference, if any, it has to be because of exchange rate, because if same exchange rate was used, there would be no difference. So the difference is arising due to exchange rate, and hence there are multiple ways in which you can solve it, but the simplest way is the balancing figure. You would say ideally your ledger balance should be 51,445. However, your ledger balance is 46,845. So the difference is actually due to different exchange rates applied, which is 5,300, and this will go, mind you, to the profit and loss. Sir, is this the only way to solve? Is the balancing figure the only way to solve? No. There are other ways to solve as well, and hence we have shown the alternative working. We have said that alternatively, हमें balancing figure नहीं पसंद है सर, ऐसा balancing पे क्यों छोड़ देने का किस्मा? Try to calculate. Yes, we will try to calculate. 1041 is actually made up of $1,000. In that 1041, this 1000 is at 40, whereas 1041 is at 45. And as a result, $1,000 into 45 minus 40, that is 5,000 rupees, is the foreign exchange gain on the initial investment. Then in 1041, there is $100. This $100 is actually recorded at 42. However, in 1041, when you convert, this is at 45. And hence, foreign exchange gain or loss on the interest component is 100 into 45 minus 40. In 1041, remember, you also have a minus 59. But this minus 59 is converted at 45 only, and in 1041 also is at 45, and hence there is no foreign exchange gain or loss, as coupon is at 45 only. And if you take the total, this comes to 5,300. This comes to 5,300. I hope you are clear with this. So this is an alternative way in which you can calculate this. And if the institute had told you that solve using amortized cost, your solution would have ended here. You would not have done this way. But unfortunately, the institute requires you to solve for FVTOCI. So can you leave this at 46,845? Is that correct? No, the answer is wrong. Why? Because that does not represent the fair value. Then what is the fair value? Well, fair value is 1060, which is given, and this has to be converted again. This is the fair value at the year end, so it will be converted at the exchange rate prevailing at the end of the year, which is 45. So 1060 into 45 that comes to 47,700. देखो यार ये 1041 is also at 45, 1060 is also at 45. So the difference between the two is not attributable to exchange difference. The difference between the two is the real fair value gain or the fair value loss, and that is around 855 rupees. That is 855 rupees. You can calculate it again as a balancing figure. The difference between 47,700 minus 46 845. So that is, you can do that over here. I have not written it, but you can always do that. Alternatively, we say again, अपन balancing figure पे अपने किस्मत को नहीं रखते. We say, why calculate balancing figure? Try to calculate conceptually. Well, conceptually, the fair value gain is $19. And this is again as on 1041 also on the year one value, 1060 also year one value. So this is a gain or loss as on the year end, and hence it has to be recorded if you were to convert it into rupees at the year end rate, which is 45. So $19 into 45 if you do is 855, or you can always calculate this as rupees 47,700 minus rupees 46,845, and I guess you will get the same answer. Okay, so what I've done over here is for each of these items I've passed the journal entry. So we have passed the journal entry for 40,000. I'm just doing it in rough. Please pardon me for my mess in the presentation here. Then you have year one. During the year you will pass the entry for interest. So I've passed a separate entry for effective interest, investment in bonds account debit to interest income. Everything is in rupees. So you've passed entry for this 4,200. Then coupon, money is received, bank account debit to investment in bonds in rupees 2,655. So bond investment reduction. And hence if you look at these three entries only, in your ledger 40,000, plus in your ledger 4,200, minus in your ledger 2,655, and hence you will have 41,545 in your ledger. However, you have to show 47,700 in your ledger. 41,545 is not correct. 47,700. So the bridge between 41,545 and 47,700 is due to foreign exchange gains or losses, which we have determined as 5,300. Even if there was no change in fair value, even if the fair value was 1041, still there would be a difference of 5,300. And so that is taken to P&L. So investment in bonds account debit, the important entry. Investment in bonds account debit 6155 to fair value reserve, that is a part of other comprehensive income 855, and foreign exchange gain, that is a part of P&L 5,300. And if I add 6155, 545 plus 6155, and you will get 47,700. So in your balance sheet, the bonds will appear at 47,700. In your income statement, gains of 5,300 due to the specific provision under Ind AS 109. Otherwise, they would have gone to OCI, and 855 will go to OCI. So I hope you are clear with this question, and I hope this working has kind of helped. Wish you all the very best. Let me know if you have any queries. There are a lot of them coming in. I try my best to resolve them to the earliest extent possible. Pardon me if I'm unable to solve it in time, but do let me know if you have any queries. Otherwise, wish you all the very best. We'll stay in touch. Maybe if there's some other issue, I'll also have a video or so before your exams. But wish you all the very best, especially November 2020 students. Be confident. Focus only on your preparation. Keep the positive momentum going. Times are tough, but remember, they're not just tough for you. The entire country, the entire globe, for that matter, is going through a challenge. Be a part of the battle. If you think it is advisable for you, take your own decision. But be a part of the battle and continue with the positive momentum, please. Wish you all the very best. Take care. Good luck. Study hard. Goodbye.